That is exactly what Chief Garcia has dedicated his life and career to doing, to serve and protect. It's now our jobs as good citizens to support our local police departments. Our motto should read, to respect and obey. As many of you have ever been in a leadership role can attest to, the buck stops with you. In leadership, the saying goes, everything is your fault. Think for a moment when a sports team is on a winning streak. We hear greatly about the star MVP and the new up-and-coming rookie. However, when your team is losing, what do we say? Fire that coach. Chief Garcia is leading our force not because he has to, but because he wants to. He could easily be anywhere on any force in the U.S., where he wouldn't have to pay $4 a gallon for gas, $5 for a Starbucks, all while sitting in gridlock traffic. He's remained in San Jose because he's dedicated to our city and he's loyal, a commodity that is rare these days. The chief will be speaking on his background today as well as the current state of affairs with the department. I implore each and every one of you to support our men and women in uniform. As we near Thanksgiving, let us not forget to be thankful for those who protect us daily on many fronts. So with that, let's bring up the chief.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here with you all. I will tell you this, if you all can see the mic, I'm wondering if this is a slam. It looks like a little wig. So I'm wondering if this was meant for me. So one of those quick little digs. It's good. All right. I like to get started and I like to know where I stand, and so there we go. Got it. Can't really help it, but that's where we're at. So again, it's an honor to be here today, and I'll talk a little bit about my background here before I start with what I like to give as a status on the department and where your police department's at. And so I was honored to be invited here. And I'll say this before, I'm everybody's police chief. There's no meeting that's too big or too small for me. So I'm honored to be here. I don't mind tough questions in the least bit. It comes with the job, and it comes with these 4 stars. And so it is my pleasure to be here. And I will tell you, I started out. I was born in a place that's in some disarray right now, on the island of Puerto Rico. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in 1970. Moved here to the state United States because we are all Americans on the island of Puerto Rico, and I moved here at a young age with my family. I learned how to speak English here in San Jose, and went to local schools here in San Jose. Ended up attending St. Francis High School in Mountain View. Actually, both my boys, I have 3 kids, all Catholic school educated. My oldest son now is in college, but he attended Bellarmine. My youngest son attends Bellarmine now. He's a junior at Bellarmine. My daughter attends a Catholic school, St. Francis Cabrini, in the area. And so that's the way we've raised our children. I'm married. And again, I got hired at the San Jose Police Department. I was 21 years old. I'm in the middle of my 26th year of law enforcement at the city of San Jose. In my time, I came up as to be chief. I didn't have a lot of administrative roles. When I became a police officer at 21 years old, I wanted to arrest a bad guy. I wanted to protect the community, and I wanted to take that element off the street. And that's quite frankly what we start off as police officers. Through the years, it's gone out. There's more to that. There's more to being in law enforcement than just putting the bad guy in jail. And you have to ensure that your community relationships are strong, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But in my career, I've worked the narcotics enforcement team. And I did that for a while. Did some undercover narcotics work while in that unit. I was on our SWAT team for about 4 years. We call it MERGE. It's an acronym for Mobile Emergency Response Group and Equipment. But it's our SWAT team. I did fugitive apprehension while I was on the SWAT team. After the SWAT team, I got promoted to sergeant. Did my time in patrol. I worked out of homicide. I was a homicide investigator for a few years. I got promoted to lieutenant out of being a homicide investigator. Became a lieutenant. Worked in the community relations division of the department. Worked in the special investigations unit of the department, which special investigations works out of the chief's office, and it's vice and criminal intelligence. So I did that for a while. Got promoted to captain. Went back to patrol. Then I took over Bureau of Investigations units. was the deputy chief of the investigations unit, deputy chief of the administration unit, then assistant chief for 3 years, and then now the chief going on 2 years as the chief of police. And so, my career has been a career where, the decisions I make, whether, I have a strong responsibility to my community and I have a strong responsibility to my rank and file. And I look at it as emotional bank accounts, and I can't be overdrawn in either one. My rank and file mean the world to me. As I'll get through this right now, your police officers do an exceptional job, and have proven that they'll give their lives for the city. Are we perfect? We're far from perfect. Okay, we make mistakes. We make many mistakes on a lot of fronts. We try not to make the same mistake twice, but we try to learn from them and move on. So the way I start is to give a historical perspective on what this department has been. So in 2009, the authorized staffing levels of the San Jose Police Department were at about 1,377 officers. In 2010, that staffing was reduced to 1,271. And in 2011 to present, the authorized staffing levels for the city of over 1 million people was 1,109. Okay, that's roughly the same authorized staffing levels, roughly, give or take a few numbers, as the same as we had in 1986. Okay, and the city's grown at well over 40%. Let me give you some comps. Okay, so, and you'll understand why I'm telling you this, and it isn't a woe is me or woe is us situation, but I'll tell you why. Cities with approximately 1,100 officers. So the city of El Paso is authorized 1,128, and they have a population of just below 700,000. Oklahoma City has an authorized staffing level 1,120, and their population is about 620,000. And then you got the city of Austin, which city of Austin is the 11th largest city in the country. We're the 10th. They have almost 1,900 sworn officers. And, I always say to myself, if I had 1,900 sworn officers, we want to get back, and my goal is to get back to be the safest, largest city in the country. If I had 1,900 officers, and I've said this, many of you have heard this joke before, but we'd be the safest, largest city, like west of the Milky Way, if I had almost 1,900 officers to do what we can do with that. I'll tell you, when I met major city chiefs, they ask us, how do you do what you do? Because regardless of what you see on the news or what you've experienced or what have you, San Jose still ranks as amongst one of the largest, safest, largest cities in this country. And so there's a lot of chiefs that ask me from time to time, how do you do it? How is it that you guys do what you do? And I tell you, it's because of the proactivity, it's because of the professionalism of the men and women that wear this uniform. And there is no other reason. The collaboration we have with our community helps, absolutely, there's no doubt about it. But the fabric that makes up a San Jose police officer is second to none. When I started doing this, we're authorized 1,109. When I started doing these talks, when I first started as a chief, we were hovering around 900 net sworn. That includes everyone that's in training and this and that and the other. So, we're now at 1,016 from 912. That includes all the kids in the academy and in the field training program. And I call them kids because now every time I'm doing I was a young guy at 21 years old when I started. But now as I keep, when I'm talking to these kids in the academy and asking them when they were born like after 1992. So it's kind of making me feel a little bit, so they're kids to me. They're kids to me. So, the major cases that this department has been involved in and the higher morale that we've received, that we have in this department, which leads to better policing, right, and treating people fair. But it's just as important, there's a lot of proactivity in this police department. The cases that these officers are making, your officers are making, and I don't know if anybody ever, every once a week or every couple weeks when I have time, I go on our Facebook site, on our Facebook page on the San Jose Police Department, and I highlight the work that the police department does, because quite frankly, the media doesn't report all the great things that my men and women do every day. Okay, they really don't. They'll report the bad stuff. And I get it. And they asked me one day, why are you doing these talks, Chief? The very first one one of the first ones that I did was an officer disarming an armed individual that was in a foot pursuit. They took the gun away and took him into custody without incident. Well, the only time that would make the news is if we had to use our firearms to protect our lives or the community's lives. That makes the news. But the fact that an officer risks his or her life to take that weapon away and takes him into custody, that doesn't make the news. And listen, I've come to understand why that doesn't make the news. So guess what? I need to be the news for my department. So I need to be the one that speaks up for my men and women. They do amazing work, and they do it every day. every single day they're doing great work. The amount of guns that we're taking off the street is pretty amazing. You know, we're taking criminals with guns off the street, multiple on a weekly basis. Officers putting their lives on the line to stop those vehicles, to search those cars, to search those individuals and find those weapons that otherwise would have turned out to be homicides, aggravated assaults, etc. And they're doing an amazing job. You know, why are we in a mess. We've been in a mess. Didn't get into this mess overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And you know, when I talk about it, you know, before it was kind of more of a downer when I would give these speeches. Now it's kind of like, you know, I'm excited about where we're at right now. I really truly am. But why we got here, really the impacts of measurable. The impacts where we simply were not competitive as a police department. Now I find myself spending less time talking about that and spending more time on the growth. Okay, because the mayor and the council stepped up to the plate when they saw that this department was dying. Okay, and they did the things necessary to raise the department from where we were at, and now we're growing again. And so I have to give the credit where the credit's due. You know, we're concentrating on the positive. You know, last February we had 7 recruits in the academy. Last February, 7 recruits in the academy. On Monday morning at 8:30, I don't know if some of you read the article or not, but on Monday morning at 8:30, I had the opportunity to address over 100 police recruits in our police academy. 100 police recruits. And we have so we have a total of about 125 that are either in the academy or in the field training program. We're not where we need to be, but we're rising. And, you know, I tell you, it's like the department, the morale of the department has really turned. In the last 6 to 8 months, we've had over 20 of our former officers that left want to come back. Okay, we've had, in the last 6 to 8 months, we've had over 30 lateral officers, which means those are police officers in other jurisdictions that want to come to San Jose. And there's more in the pipeline. And I don't know if anyone here remembers the umpire strike in Major League Baseball years ago, but when they all got fired and then they wanted to come back, well, guess what? The commissioner didn't take them all back. They wanted to take the best back. And that's what we're doing. We're only taking our best back. We're not a desperate police department anymore. We're not just going to get numbers to get numbers. We're going to get numbers and grow it. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. We're competitive again. You know, I was in New York City. We're doing a lot of recruiting nationwide. We're leaving no stone unturned. I took a red eye, and I'm not good with red eyes. I found that out the hard way. But I took a red eye. We were doing testing on Friday and Saturday in New York City. And I took a red eye Thursday night. Didn't realize how packed the red eye from San Jose to New York is, and I found that out as well, and many of you have probably done that. And the way JetBlue sat us, it was kind of weird too, because I was in Group 1, but ended up being last. That was a shock too. But anyway, so I fly red eye to New York. I land in New York on Friday morning. I go administer the testing process, which was the written evaluation and physical agility. I do that Saturday as well, and I fly back Saturday night. Well, we almost had 200, I'll call them kids again, we almost had 200 kids from the city of New York and nearby that wanted to be San Jose cops. Now, you sit back and you stop for a second and say to yourself, well, first of all, I'll tell you this, in New York, it's very difficult to be a police officer. It takes like 3 or 4 years to get through their process. It's very different than ours. The unemployment in the city of New York is rough. And you know, and so you sit back, and when I was addressing these kids as they were taking the test, I'm like, what makes someone say, you know what, if I get hired, I'm going to fly across the country to be part of that department? Well, I tell you this. Listen, it isn't me. It isn't the fact that you wear a cool uniform. We're doing something right in this city. We're doing something right in this city. Okay, this community and this police department is doing something right in the city. I can do something that most police chiefs can't do. I can stand in front of academies and new recruits, and being the chief of the 10th largest city in the country, I can tell them that, hey, our community will hold us accountable when need be, and they need to. But our community supports your police department. Our community supports us. And I can say that, and I can say that with a straight face, because some chiefs can't. Some chiefs have to sell something else. That's a major part of what I can sell. In today's day and age of being a law enforcement officer, to know that you have the support of your community is one of the biggest things that we need to tackle as we recruit. So it was amazing. And so, you know, I can sell this department. I bleed blue. I bleed San Jose. And nothing beats the police work here. I love the diversity of the city, and nothing beats the police work here and being that individual that people can come to when they need help. Nothing beats it here. But, you know, we needed to attack this growth in 5 different ways. We need to keep our people here. We need to recruit. We need to get our people back. We need to bring laterals and stem retirements. And because of the competitiveness, everything that we said is coming to fruition. All those things, all those 5 things are happening now. You know, regardless, you know, we never thrown our hands up in the air and quit. You know, I have a great rapport with the POA, with the Police Officers Association. We're doing a staffing study for our department to see exactly how we can better deploy with the resources that we have. We're going to grow differently, but we're going to learn from the past. You know, we still have operational issues. I will tell you, like I said, we didn't get into this mess overnight. We're not going to get out overnight. We still have, although you see the 100, we still have approximately 160 10-hour shifts per week that are being staffed by overtime. 160 10-hour different shifts per week just so you can have a police officer on patrol. We are still doing that. And so that's better than the alternative, where we're in the direction we were headed. The way I look at it, well, quite frankly, we had a lot of holes in the boat, okay? And we've been able to plug all those holes, but unfortunately, we need to bail water out, okay? That's just the reality of what we're doing. But you know what? Again, this isn't a negative talk. This is a positive talk that I'm giving you, okay? Because I tell you what, I walk around briefing and it almost feels like that movie that was in black and white and now turned into color, okay? It feels like little cartoon birds are coming out of the lockers like singing to us. I mean, the morale is shifting and people are happy. And people want to come to work here, and they love to come to work here. You know, we're going to keep building with our special operations units, divisional teams. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons that this city is as safe as it is because of the proactivity of your police officers. Your officers, we hire from the human race. Not every officer is what I'm about to say. But what I'll tell you is your officers, for the most part, are not sitting behind a target waiting for 911 calls. They're out there being proactive, making arrests, okay? They're taking that element off the street, okay? And it's interesting, because I talked about this many times, and y'all have probably also seen the fact that I pushed back against the county's proposal of the $15,000 warrant citing. We can't take any more tools away from our officers. Okay, whether it's Prop 47, Prop 57, I still have yet to see a bill come from Sacramento that helps victims instead of giving people second, third, fourth, fifth chances. And so we're not, and trust me, everything I'm saying here, I've probably told many a reporter, so it doesn't really bother me one bit or the other, but I need to be credible and need to be true to myself to say we need things that help our victims as well. Being proactive and holding people accountable, holding people accountable for what they do, what they're doing, and striving to be fair and just in the way we do it are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. And we're seeing a little bit, we're seeing a lot on one end, and quite frankly, in my opinion, not enough on the other. And so, my belief in one of the things is we're fair in the way we're policing our city, which is what absolutely we're striving for, but we're also being proactive and holding people accountable is how we keep the city safe. And that's how I've come up as a police officer. One of the things that I'm going to do is we start getting these kids out of the academy, that one of the first things I'm doing is coming soon is I'm going to start an undercover burglary unit. Okay? Who thinks we have a lot of burglaries in San Jose? Show of hands. All right? Well, here you go. And I know this is no secret. 100 burglaries are not committed by 100 different people. Okay? I hope that's not a shock to anyone. All right? If I have a unit of proactive officers that are out there taking down burglary crews, we will make a dent in the burglary in the city. I guarantee. And so that's one of the things where we're going to work on some proactivity and some proactive things to help us. Because when you don't have the amount of officers that other cities have, the only way you make up for that is by having hard-working, fair, professional officers that are out there doing what they do. And that's what we're trying to strive for. Let me just get through this, and then we'll get to questions. There's some other things that we're doing. Again, community relations. It starts with me and ends with the last senior officer. I mean, what I say to the community when I'm out in the community doesn't mean anything if my officers don't believe it. I can stand up here and tell you all we want community relations, but if my officer working at 2 in the morning on a Wednesday doesn't believe the same things, then it doesn't do me any good. We're one bad incident away from having news trucks in front of the police department, and we have to ensure that our officers are on it. We've done a lot of things for our community. We're going to continue to do them. We've taken training in fair and impartial policing training. We've done procedural justice training. We do de-escalation training. I just mandated that all my officers be trained in crisis intervention training because we do have issues with our mentally ill population. I will tell you one of the issues that I have with that is we need more resources out there. We need help in dealing with the mentally ill. We need resources from the people that are experts. What I say all the time, and I've said it publicly before as well, is that oftentimes the easy way out is to put the onus on the law enforcement officer. Okay? Train them. Give them more training. They're out there 24/7. There's a lot of them. Let's just put the training on them. Well, that's not right. Okay? It's not right to make the officers do more. They're not experts in this. And then in the end, when the situation goes bad, those officers have been in the room with an officer-involved shooting. The officers aren't jumping up and down when they've had to use their firearms and to save their lives or someone else's life when someone's mentally ill. And to not have resources in place to help our mentally ill population is irresponsible. And so I hope that we get into more where we have more programs for that. We have our body-worn cameras. We have a body-worn cameras. We've done the University of Texas El Paso study. We studied ourselves to see, are we being righteous in the way we're stopping people, okay, in the way we're dealing with our community. And there were some good things, there were some bad things, but we'll learn from them and get better. We have a use of force committee. We go out and do coffee with a cop. We have Team Kids where we go out to our community and our kids to kind of give them lessons so they can see law enforcement officers from a different lens. I have an LGBT committee because you know what? Bias simply is not a racial issue. We have use of force, transparency. But the one thing we need to do is proactivity suffers when all these proactivity suffers, in my opinion. And it's been said, quite frankly, Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, says that a lot of the reforms that they've done over there, he feels has led to less proactivity, less arrests, because the officers feel that things are getting rammed down their throats. And so the interesting part about it, and I said this in the article that just came out, because we just recently came out with some use of force steps that we're doing, is that we need to recognize that, when done irresponsibly, and the officers not being as proactive makes us less safe, not more safe. It makes us less safe. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'll say it every time, that being proactive and striving to be fair and just with our community are not mutually exclusive. And we need to continue to say that. We need to recognize that we're not in crisis, okay, that we're not in crisis. We need to take a step back and say that, you know what, our police officers in this department have done a very good job and have made a lot of good strides. But we could be in crisis someday, which is why I'm always thinking, whether it's me I'm shaving in the shower, what have you, on a weekend, I'm thinking, okay, what more can I do? What more can I do? Because we could be in crisis someday. And I don't want that emotional bank account to weaken. I work on department morale. Improve the day-to-day working conditions of what we can control. The simple things that are no cost, but that mean a lot to the officer. As I mentioned earlier, people often ask me, what can we do for your officers? What can we do? And the whole reason why I tell you a lot about the staffing issues and the woes that we've been in and how we're rising back is just simply to say thanks. When you see a police officer, just say thank you. Because I know it goes a long way. It didn't happen all the time. I'm having a cup of coffee, we'll get a cup of coffee, and I get a thank you. And immediately I go, well, thank you for thanking me, but please thank your men and women that are out here doing this job that don't have the resources that other major cities have, but they keep coming out here. They keep risking their lives for you, and those are the people to thank. I got to be media friendly. I'm open and I'm very transparent, probably more transparent than some people would like, both internally and externally, but that's just me. And, in good times and in bad, and I need to lead. I'll stand up to the criticism when warranted, but by God, I'm going to defend my men and women when they're unnecessarily attacked. And we have not done ourselves a lot of favors in law enforcement in the country in recent years. Some warranted, most have not been. And I'm going to stand up for my men and women for the unwarranted attacks. It's a very difficult job your men and women do, but they're second to none, and they need someone to fight for them. You know, we're not checking boxes here with what we're doing. You know, I remember being an officer sitting in the back of the briefing room and the chief's putting out this and putting out that. And in the back of the briefing room, there's an officer that goes, oh, the chief wants a job in Seattle, or the chief wants to go to LA, or the chief wants to go to Dallas, or San Diego, or what have you. It's pretty simple to me because I'm sure some of you have heard me say before. When I turned 47 in December, coming up. Oh, well, thank you. But wow, it got hot real quick. And when I retire from the San Jose Police Department, I'm going to be a high school teacher and a football coach. I have zero desire. I will never wear another patch on my arm. I can't talk, and you're not the first to hear it, sorry, and you won't be the last to hear it. I can't go talk to community groups, take the heat, speak passionately about it in some other city. San Jose means everything to me. I learned how to speak English here. Okay, San Jose gave me an opportunity and a chance to live the dream. And I couldn't pass that on somewhere else. And so when we're doing what we're doing for this department, it isn't the chief trying to impress Gil Garcetti or trying to impress the governor and try to impress anybody anywhere else because he wants a job after he retires. Yeah, the job I want, if anyone's a principal at a high school and needs a high school football coach, I'm here. But I'm going to give 1,000% for this police department for the remaining years that I'm here. And if I do my job right, I really shouldn't have much energy to be a chief somewhere else. And so I say that it's important for me to tell you that as a community. It's important for me to tell my rank and file so that they truly believe that, you know what, man, the chief really is not doing this for any other reason. He's just trying to do the right thing. I like to think that's what we're trying to accomplish. You know, I want to try to be a leader. And when I say I want this department to be a leader in this county. We've done so much in this county above and beyond, with all due respect. But we are the largest agency in the county. We're the third largest city in the state. We should be leading by example and showing people how to do the way. And one of the things that I'd like to say, I've been vocal, is again about, and now this is going to be the third time you've heard me say it, is that proactivity and fair and just policing are not mutually exclusive. And that's what we need to continue to start saying. You know, I tell you, it's hard enough when I don't want to be a chief anywhere else. I mean, I tell you, it's hard enough to make decisions when you're dealing with, you have to deal with your rank and file, your community, and your city council, than having to worry about the next future boss you might have. And unfortunately, I will say that that's a problem with a lot of leadership in my position, is that I think people sometimes just need to take a deep breath and go, hey, you have arrived. Do the best you can here. And, everyone does it for their own reasons. I'm not, and they need to. I'm just telling you that's not what I'm trying to accomplish here. Again, we're human. We make mistakes, but we have some amazing officers amongst the best in the country. My officers have proven. The hardest thing, I had to do an interview with last week, and they asked me, one of the questions they were prepping me to ask, they never asked it, was, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? And the last two out of the last 3 years, I've had to give the American flag away to a mother, a spouse, and that's the hardest thing that I've had to do. And so when people attack my officers, and I know that their hearts are in the right place, it cuts deep. The other day when I saw the 100 officers out there, knowing everything that we've been through as an organization, it was hard not to get emotional. It was hard not to see these 100 and so officers that are going to come to help and to save the day for our community and for the rest of the rank and file that are working so much overtime. Again, I'm going to open it up to the questions again, but it's an honor to be your police chief, and I will tell you, God bless the San Jose PD. Thank you.
Thank you. When we were concerned after the Scalise shooting and after vandalism here because we were Republicans, Chief Garcia sent over his Western Regional Commander to make sure that they would keep an eye on our meeting. So we really thank you for that.
Chief, first of all, thank you very much for your service and for the superb men and women in the department. I've lived here for many years. I've lived in other cities and continue to be impressed. I'm wondering about what you would like us to do to help make you and the department successful? You mentioned a few areas. Could you be more specific in what we can do to help you?
Well, what I will say is just continue in your communities to have those conversations with your communities, and I will invite you all. If I brought a map, but I mean, if you go online and see your division captains, when you have issues, and I know you deal well with your division captain, David, and so when you go online and see your division captains and you get a group together, communicate with us. You know what I will tell you, I'd like to think, and they better, that my captains should have the same mindset I have, is to be very accessible and to be open and to have those conversations. So help us help you. Tell us the information so that we can help you back. And again, and it gets frustrating from time to time because as our staffing's rising, but we need to keep those lines of communication open because that's what keeps us safe as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I hate these things. I have a big mouth, so I can talk. This is a recruiting question that started before your tenure here. What are you doing to recruit the old officers that left in droves back? Are you going to reinstitute their contracts that were taken away from them unilaterally? How are you going to bring them back? Because trust was totally lost.
Well, that's a great question. And as I had mentioned earlier, we've had almost over 30 of our old officers request to come back. Just recently, I will tell you, the city of Redwood City lost 6 officers in a fell swoop because they all came back. Now, it's funny because we're the largest police department in the county, and if I lost 6 officers today, that would really hurt me. I can't imagine how much, it hurts other agencies. And so the message is getting out there. We are getting a lot back. They're supposed to email me first. And then we'll see. A lot of their contracts did get restored. The disability, the contracts with retirement did get restored.
That were there before.
Yes. So we're getting a lot of them back. A lot of them are waiting to come back. I'll tell you a funny story. Can I tell a story? Okay, I just want to make sure. I don't want to get. I'm watching. I don't want to tell a story. So I sit on the county chiefs board, and we're there with all the chiefs. And there's a lot of agencies in the county that took a lot of our officers away. And I said in a meeting a couple months ago, as we were rising again, I said, we're getting a lot of our officers back, which got a lot of people nervous. And then I told them, and then I will give everyone the courtesy that they gave me when they're coming back, which wasn't much. And there was a couple nervous laughs, but you know what? I want my people back, and we're getting them back. And their contracts are back to where they were. The biggest thing from disability. I have no control over that. But that's what the measure that passed got us back to. Thank you.
I'd like you to address the issue, and this is a question. Why is it when we call the non-emergency number, it rings and rings and rings, doesn't get answered, and if it is answered, then you're on hold for 45 minutes to an hour or more? What can be done about this, or what is the plan?
So I will say a couple things. One, when those specific issues happen, please call us. And again, that relationship. And again,
The non-emergency.
no. What I'm saying is this: when those issues arise, and you feel frustrated. That's one of the great things about having access to your police captains through the website. Let them know what happened, so we can drill down to figure out exactly what happened with that specific time. I'll tell you this: our dispatchers, percentage-wise, are almost less staffed than our police department. Okay. No, I had a big roundtable recently with the chief of San Francisco and Oakland on Channel 2, where all of us are having difficulty with our response times with that. We're working on that. We need to get more staffing in our communication bureau, but I will tell you, and I'll say this all the time, when in doubt, call 911. Okay, when in doubt, call 911. But I do apologize. The 311, the non-emergency line, probably means we're getting a lot more 911 calls than we can answer 311 calls.
I just follow up. Is there another phone number that we can call other than 911 or 311 to register those comments?
We're working on a texting mechanism where we'll be able to do that at some point. But again, someone has to be on the other end of that. So I don't want to say that that's going to be the panacea, but we are working on different ways where people can give non-emergency information.
Okay.
which is so important about having a relationship with your division captain, so you could talk about those things too.
Okay. My name is Victor San Vicente, and the question is, you mentioned about being proactive. What are you planning to do as far as terrorist attacks, being proactive to that, and what could somebody like me do to help you?
Well, one of the things we always say, if you see something suspicious, report it. If you see something, say something, quite frankly. You know, when it comes to terrorist acts, again, you know, I know I'm not saying anything here. The only thing you could really do is try to mitigate and be as prepared as you possibly can. I don't think anyone here, anybody's going to be able ever to say that they're going to be 1,000, they're going to be 100%, never, nothing's ever happen here. We have to think ahead. We have to look at our soft targets that we have. We've been working with one of the major things. We're looking at what's happening globally, and as we can see, the car attacks seem to be what's being used. So we're looking at the county chiefs are looking at ways where we can get barricades put up when we have major events and able to stop those type of events, trying to harden our targets. We have a lot of people, and then continue to train our rank and file along with the allied agencies to do that. And so we're always looking at tools to do that, and we have members in the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the task force with the FBI. A lot of it's information sharing, and we're getting that. So we're like any other major city. Always have our eye on the ball on that. We're always trying to see ways to get better, but we're looking at what's going on and working with that. Thank you for the question.
Okay, next. Can you share your view on sanctuary cities?
Anyone else? Any other questions? No, absolutely. I absolutely will. Well, first of all, the title sanctuary city, sanctuary state doesn't sit well with me. Okay? San Jose is not a sanctuary city. We still abide by U.S. code. We abide by U.S. Code 18, which is what the federal law states as to what makes a sanctuary city not a sanctuary city. People talk about, and I actually tried to work with Senator De Leon actually on the state bill that just passed. That we're not a sanctuary state, and I don't like that title because that title seems to think that we're softer on crime and giving people chances that otherwise, and that's not the case. I will tell you this: I am here to protect the rights, the human rights of every undocumented immigrant that is not committing felony crimes or crimes in this city, that are working hard for their family and make this country better. We are not here to protect those who are preying on those same communities. Okay? So we're not a sanctuary city, but I will tell you, I'm going to defend this police department, and this city is going to defend the human rights of our undocumented immigrants that are working hard for their families and make this country better. Thank you.
This is a chain of command question I wondered about for 30 years. Exactly and specifically, who do you take orders from on which laws to enforce and not enforce? Did they give you a list? Don't enforce these, do enforce these. Is it the city manager? That's one guy. Is it the city council people? That's 10. Is it the mayor alone? That's one guy. Or is it 11? Exactly who do you take orders from? I'm not pointing the finger. It could be any police chief. Just the...
Yeah. Gee, I wonder what you're getting at with that. You're very unclear with that. There really isn't anybody. My boss is the city manager. The city manager is my boss. The city manager answers to mayor and council, but my direct supervisor is the city manager.
So he gives you that list?
No, there is no list.
Yes, there is. There's got to be.
Well, yeah, the list is called the Penal Code.
Next. Sorry.
It's a pretty big book too.
Hi, Coach. I'm sure you remember me.
Yes.
We've had our encounters a few times. As you know, my son Gavin, he's in school for law enforcement, and there's a very big chance he can start in San Jose. With that being said, how are you going to truly protect our police officers if they are being told to stand down to illegal immigrants that commit crime?
So that's kind of a dual-edged question there. But again, like I mentioned earlier, we're not here to defend people that are committing crimes. We're not.
There's too many questions to go along with that. That's not good enough answer.
But we're not. I don't know how else to tell you that we're not here to defend.
I'm an awakened Democrat, now a Republican, and I wish to know, of course, you're excellent. Do you agree that Mr. President Trump has something to do strengthen the reputation of the police department? And he talks about strengthening the military. Does it help also the enrollment for the police force? Because be proud to be a policeman, and you can do what you are trained to do to protect us, President Trump.
Well, I will say this: there are things that I agree with. There are things that I don't agree with. Okay, from the president and from the White House. I'll be honest with you, but I cannot deny, and no officer can deny, that it's obvious that the president of the United States supports their law enforcement, and the officers do appreciate that.
How you doing? I had a question that the Mayor Lucaro seems to think that in speeches that Sanctuary City is a good tool for law enforcement. So he supports it according to his speeches. I've been to 2 of them, and the follow up on that would be: is there anything in the future where we can have this group of citizens, this group of people, become regular citizens where they aren't treated special?
That's a good question. I think what the mayor is referring to, and again, I don't want to put words in the mayor's mouth because we've had these conversations before, and again, I don't like that sanctuary title. I think what we're getting at from a police department, when I said I'm here to defend the rights of illegal, undocumented immigrants that are in this country, not committing crimes and working hard, is simply the fact that we want people to report crimes, okay, that are not criminals without fear of having immigration enforced. The sanctuary title is what muddies all the waters with that. But it helps law enforcement with people reporting crimes without fear that if I'm a victim of a crime, not the suspect, that I'm going to end up being deported. That's really the gist of it.
Hi. My question has to do with if you could elaborate a little bit on the impacts and your views about Prop 47 and Prop 57?
Well, it's taken a lot of tools away from officers. It's made things that used to be felonies, misdemeanors. It's taken the ability away from judges to make certain decisions on certain cases. And so there have been impacts. Recently, in an email that I sent out to my rank and file, is oftentimes the people that suffer the most are our community and our police officers as we experiment with our criminal justice system. And so we've seen impacts, definitely we've seen impacts, particularly from Prop 57. And we need to continue to work through them as best we can, which is why when other things such as the bail amount site issue comes up, that I can't stand with that. I can't, because our officers need as many tools as they can in their toolbox to take care of your problems. And so we have seen impacts of it, and I don't know, you know, the chiefs, the Cal chiefs are oftentimes opposed to these bills, but it's difficult to get law enforcement type legislation out from what I see. You know, so I will tell you, there's a bill coming up that I will work on hard from the parents, and I would ask you to go to the foundation, the Alessandra Foundation, and I'll tell you this is gonna be my first time kind of pumping up this bill that I've heard may be difficult, and I really, for the life of me, don't understand why. But Alessandra was murdered a couple years ago in a domestic violence incident 2 weeks after she broke up with her boyfriend. That individual had been convicted of domestic violence in Nevada. And so what this foundation is trying to do is they're trying to get a database so that all of our little girls can see an individual and know if that individual's been arrested for or convicted of domestic violence before. Does that seem like a no-brainer? Yeah. Okay, so I say that now because that's in the process of being written. And we're going to need, and when you say how you can help, we're going to need some support with that. Because to me, father of a little girl, it doesn't matter if I'm a father of a little girl, I'm a father of 2 sons too that need to know how to treat women as well. And this bill is important. And so I just went on a tangent, but anyway, that's what I, you know what I'm saying. Anyway.
What's the number on that bill?
You know what? It hasn't been introduced yet. But if you look at the foundation, they're starting out. I just met with the parents last week. It's the Alessandra Foundation, and it's something that we're going to need. And that was to your point. Those are the type of bills that we need to kind of counteract some of the others.
So I'm glad to hear that you're going to have a burglary task force. But as a person who's had their home broken into by two Sereno drug-addled gang members who were accidentally caught by the San Jose police, and I'm told I can't tell stories, but the two police officers also told me that these two people, once they caught them, would just be back out on the street. When I went to the property room in San Jose PD,
What's the question? I'm sorry.
the question is, what good will it do? So a lot of things are being...
What good will the burglary thing do if people are released after they're arrested?
Of course.
Is it just to the question?
No, well, so it's nice to stand up here and say we're going to do things, but what's the reality?
Well, here's what I can say. There's a couple different entities that you need to understand, and some people, our job is to go out and we arrest the individual that's committed a crime. That individual then gets booked into the county jail, goes through the process. Now, you know, some of those questions as to why they're being released or why we're releasing them, we're not, and I'm not trying to pass the buck on this, but we are not the holders of those individuals once we take them into custody. That would be a question that I'm not going to answer for the county and for the sheriff as to what happens when we've brought in people and they've been convicted of burglary. That's a question for them. I'll tell you this, and most county chiefs, most California chiefs will tell you this. I don't want ICE in my communities arresting or picking people up that are casualties, meaning they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with someone who's a criminal and been convicted of a crime. If ICE isn't allowed to go into the jails to get those individuals, then they have no other choice but then to go out to my community. Okay, so I can't answer that question for you, but I can tell you to put that on the San Jose police officer because they're taking them off the street. We don't have a say as to what happens after we've taken them and arrested them in the custody. So all we do is to continue to go out to grab them, and we continue to ensure that these individuals are off the street on our watch.
Thank you for all you do. You mentioned that we're one of the large cities in the U.S., but that we don't have all the resources that other large cities have. What would be some of those resources that we don't have that they do?
Yeah, I think staffing. You know, more officers. I mean, I will say this. I mean, we're working on our technology and things of that nature, but nothing will ever take the place of the men and women that wear the uniform. And so staffing is the biggest number one thing that we need. But you know what? Every police chief in the country needs to recognize and realize that, you know, there's only so much money to go around for all city services, and so it's a balance. But I would say staffing is the number one thing that we need that other major cities have. I mean, even smaller cities per capita. Oakland, smaller than San Jose. San Francisco, smaller than San Jose, have many more officers than we do, and so staffing is the number one. Per ratio per capita.
So I introduced you to the Adopt a Cop program, and I'm wondering if the prayers are being felt by you, because I adopted you.
Well, I will say this: I'm making this in this meeting, okay? So I think they're working all right. No, you know what? I will tell you. Not only are they working for me, but you know what? My rank and file has been safe this year. So God bless you for doing that. Thank you.
Praise God. All right.
Chief, I appreciate your proactiveness, but I just learned that the City Council just has expanded or approved the marijuana issue. To me, that is looking in the wrong direction. What's your comments?
Well, I'm not a proponent of it, but you know, and there's a lot of people on the council. I mean, the mayor wasn't a proponent of it either, along with other council members. But it was the will of the voters. And so we have to look at that from a police perspective and try to regulate it as best we can. I have issues with it, and yesterday at council I addressed my issues. One, it's a very new system that the state doesn't even know how to regulate it necessarily so far. We need the staffing to regulate not only the 16 collectives that we have, but the ones that are operating illegally. I don't want any more drugs being accessible to our kids. And actually, there's been some studies that have found that states that have recreational marijuana have seen an increase in adolescent experimentation. And then the final thing is we don't have a mechanism to measure DUI under marijuana use. And so, but again, you know, a lot of these things when they're coming to vote and people putting these bills together, those things aren't said. I had to say them yesterday at council. At the end of the day, though, you know, it's the will of the voters. And so we're going to do the best we can under those parameters and just ensure that we regulate that industry as best we can so that we can mitigate those fears that I have.
I was just wondering if you could give us an update on what's happening with human trafficking and what you see in San Jose and what some updates. We don't see a lot in the news.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, I just had that was a great question from the League of Women Voters that I had an interview with last week, and they asked that exact same question. And you know, our human trafficking unit is made up of, you know, there's one sergeant, there's 4 officers and 2 administrative staff, and they're really renowned around Northern California. So far this year, we've brought, I think, about almost 38 to 40 juvenile victims of human trafficking that we've saved. We've arrested 5 individuals for trafficking. I think 2 are in the pipeline at the district attorney's office. And so we continue to, it is an issue that we continue to look at. One of the things that's always it's one of those crimes that need to be reported a lot of times. It's not one of those things that just stands out to an officer as we're working on that. But we're absolutely working on that extremely hard, and our unit is making a lot of strides.
Is it up since last year, previous years?
I don't know the stats of the last year, but I'll tell you, I mean, for what they're doing, for the type of crime that it is, they're doing a really good job. I think I'll say, you know, human trafficking is not just the sex trade. You know, I think a lot of us look at it from the sex trade perspective, but a lot of it is sweatshops and other things that happen. And so I don't know if we're up or down. I just know we're constantly trying to battle and attack all those fronts.
Okay. What does it do to the morale of the officers who are risking their life when they see people who've been arrested then released by the county?
You know, they need me to, this just doesn't happen with anybody. It happens with juveniles. And other issues, and I think what they expect is for their chief to speak up and say it's unacceptable at times. There is a fine line between rehabilitation and giving people chances and keeping our community safe. And I need to ensure that I keep my eye on the ball and do that. But officers, for the most part, this isn't a new phenomenon. You know, I'm starting on my 26th year of law enforcement, and in 1992. There were individuals that I had arrested, and they'd be back out 2 days later. This is a phenomenon that every law enforcement officer in America deals with. I think we all just look. My main thing, and I taught an ethics class years ago, is at the end of the day, every police officer looks in the mirror at the end of your watch and say, I did my job. We can't control what other people do, but if we can look in the mirror and say, I did my job, then the officers aren't as affected.
Thank you.
Hi, you mentioned Chicago, and they have the strictest gun laws. They have a larger police force. What contributes to that city having one of the highest homicide rates versus San Jose?
Paul, I can't answer why Chicago, what Chicago's issues are with that. I'll tell you, Walter Katz, who was our previous IPA here, went to Chicago to work for the mayor, and he actually told me at one point that they need to have federal laws against the individuals that are committing gun crimes, and they need to charge them federally with some of the gun crimes that are occurring there. As far as why they have more or less crime than we have in San Jose, I can't answer that without having Chicago here.
Morning. We certainly are appreciative of you and your team's efforts. I wanted to ask you, in light of the active shooting that took place in the church in Texas recently, if we as individuals are to find ourselves involved with an active shooter, what's the best thing for us to do as individuals to protect ourselves?
That's a great question. Great question. And let me answer it this. Whenever we get the active shooter, things have been going on for years. I remember in 1999, I was on the SWAT team in 1999, and if someone can remember, 1999 was the year we had Columbine. And I remember sitting in a room with the rest of my SWAT officers for about 8 hours trying to figure out what tactics are we going to use if we have an active shooter situation. Are we going to pass up victims? Are we going to do this? I mean, it got into a heated conversation with officers saying, I'm never going to pass up a little kid that's bleeding. And we had to talk about, okay, I mean, when you talk about SWAT, SWAT cops have a certain type of attitude, and it got pretty heated. And so this active shooter question really strikes at me. And we end up, as the SWAT officers, thinking of what tactics we use, when the reality of it is it's our patrol officers that are going to be dealing with the active shooter, not our SWAT officers that will be. And so one of the things that we train people to do is really it's run, hide, and fight. I mean, in the past, it's always, try to cower, and then the first thing you got to do is run to safety, okay? The next thing you got to do is try to barricade yourself somewhere and hide, all right? And then the third thing you got to do is come up with a plan, because I'm going to tell you, if you are barricaded in that room with 3 or 4 of your friends, and someone's coming in that door, don't just sit there. Fight. Fight. Do what you have to do to stay alive, is what that means. And that's what we train our libraries. We don't say fight to schools, we say defend, because it's difficult to tell a second grade class, fight. So we defend, do the best you can. Again, and I tell people all the time, when we come up with these issues that we have, and there's a lot of evil in this world, and we have to be as best prepared as we can for it, us and you. So those are the 3 things that we tell our community. Run, hide, fight. There's a good video on YouTube, by the way, that the city of Houston did. If you YouTube run, hide, fight, the city of Houston did a really good training video on that, and we kind of took a little bit of that.
Would you agree that federal law supersedes state and local law? That's the first part of my question. Do you?
It depends.
Depends.
Well, because I think, are you going towards the immigration issue?
No. No.
No.
In general.
In general, yeah, federal probably supersedes the state law, yeah.
Okay, second part, how many of the administration and officers have taken a course and passed a test on the U.S. Constitution?
It's a good question, and I think probably the last time was in high school that they probably did. Yeah, we don't do that. So, but that was a good zinger. But no, we don't do that one.